I want you to guess how many small businesses there are in your country. And I actually want to give you some statistics for the UK where I live and in the US, some of the two strongest economies historically in the world. Now, in the US, it's something like nearly 30 million small businesses. And I think something like nearly half of them make under 100K a year in revenue. Now, that's the majority of the GDP of the US. And in the UK, I think as of, middle of February this year in 2024, there are over 5.5 million small businesses in the UK, which makes up over 99% of the entire population of businesses in the UK. And a large percentage of small businesses, in fact, nearly half of them stop trading in the first 5 years. And this is quite insane when you really think about it. Because when you're thinking about the fact that in most cases, over half of the businesses in a country will probably not be trading in the next 5 years and be taken over by another set of small businesses that start, and the cycle keeps happening over and over and over and over and over again. Because these businesses just can't find and catch the momentum over those few years. I think it's something like half of them stop, or maybe more than half stop after 5 years, and then something like 98% of small businesses fail in the first 10 years. So it's almost guaranteed that most small businesses fail in the first 5 to 10 years of trading. But why is that? What is it? Just because they don't have a good product or service? Is it because they don't have enough manpower for certain things? Is it because just what metrics is it? What are the factors that affect small business owners? Now I've done a bunch of research about this and why businesses fail, and is it the sales? Is it marketing? Is it just to do with, like I said, manpower? Is it trying to find a good product market fit? Is it just not enough promotion? Is it to do with just the costs? Because that's normally a massive issue, is the fact that the reason a lot of small businesses fail, I realized, is because of during certain economic periods, especially during recessions or near recessions, or just times when costs go up so much for certain products or services, a small business can't compete with a larger business because the larger business has the cash flow and has the cash reserves to be able to invest tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some cases millions or tens of millions into stock or into the costs of operating, when the small business simply can't. Because let's say a small business making 100K a year, if they need to suddenly buy half of their revenue in stock because of an economic downturn in a country, or because of a financial, you know, dip in the company's revenue, the bigger business, has the cash reserves and the cash flow because they're making tens of millions, hundreds of millions a year, to be able to spend 50K or 100K or more on stock or on costs. Maybe if they have a downturn for a while, typically a small business, if they're only making maybe 5 to 10K a month in revenue and maybe only 1 to 2K a month in pure profit, or just a couple of, a few K at most in profit, they can't afford to invest, maybe 3 to 5 months of their cash flow, of their revenue, not their profit, in stock, because they just don't have the money. And often, if they need to, then they'll have to use business overdrafts or take out some loans, some debt, to be able to afford that stock, to hope that they can then sell it, or to be able to just, keep running the business because of an economic downturn in that period of time. And that's why I believe most small businesses fail. That's the most common factor that affects most small businesses. Like when you look at the biggest reports, and when you look at, even just if my family runs small businesses, and it's the biggest thing that affects them. And ultimately, when you're trying to compete with a big business, it's just seemingly impossible, because how can you compete against someone that just has the cash reserves and has the ability to keep going even when you don't have money, but they have the reserves because they have the profits to be able to afford to keep going, pay their staff, pay the operating costs, pay the bills, pay the utilities, pay for the rental place, pay for the lease on that because they have, half a year's worth of revenue in cash reserves because they just have the ability to, get all their profit from it. Whereas a small business can't afford that because they've got the staff to pay for. They haven't got cash reserves. They've got to try and keep costs. They've got to try and maintain the business, maintain operations, but they can't afford to, which is why typically they go into debt to try and afford to. But if they've got to spend more to just keep going, then they can't compete with the big business. And that's the biggest thing I see. Or at least the most common thing I see. Now, really, the only actual way to be able to get around this is to be able to have more manpower, or to be able to be prepared for times like this. Because ultimately, this is always going to be, it's always going to happen. There's always going to be eventualities where you have to invest or spend some of your reserves to be able to cover a period of time when either you're in a slump, or there's just random, there's a downturn in the news means that costs for your goods or services go up and you've got to pay suppliers more for the same thing, or whatever reason it might be that you have to just spend more than you normally would, or have a random, have to spend, randomly to be able to keep operations going, or because costs have gone up. This is always the way for businesses, and this is why small businesses typically fail. However, if you are able to prepare for those times, then in theory, you'll be able to keep going. Because if you're prepared for it, then you'll be able to survive that time and be able to pay for those things, whether it's, a moment where the economy's down the drain and there's no revenue and you're not making any profits, so you've got to keep, you just got to kind of fabricate the cash flow with your cash reserves so that you can actually, or fabricate's the wrong word, but maintain operations regardless of profits not coming in, but just use the cash that you have saved up in the business. Or you have to be able to afford to pay for, overpriced stock or whatever it might be that's gone up in price because, that supplier has higher costs now, because it's always supply and demand of, if a supplier's price has gone up, it's because their prices have gone up for them, so they have to charge more for the stock that you can buy as a business, and all these different variables that affect each other that ultimately affect you making money. Now, you probably know a small business owner, or you're probably a small business owner yourself, because they make up the bulk of the economy. In whatever country you're in, they make up the bulk of the economy. Unless you're in Silicon Valley in the US, then you probably know a small business owner. Even then, you probably know a tech startup, let's be honest. But the reality is that you will most likely be a small business owner or know a small business owner, and they will really, empathize with this or sympathize with this reality, because it's the reality for most of them. They can't afford these times when things cost more and they don't have the cash reserves for them. They've got to pay more for stock, or they've got to keep going during this period where there's no customers, there's no clients coming, and there's just this hard time and they can't survive it. And they either have to close, or they've got to take out some business loans so that they can afford this downtime. So really, the only actual way around this is by preparing for it and having the manpower to be able to prepare for it and operate during these times. And the only way that you can really actually prepare for it is by being able to be constantly working on getting your name out there as a business, and being able to ultimately always be promoting yourself in some way. And it's always why I believe in marketing. I run a marketing agency and I've got multiple clients. And I think that thankfully for them, they're not necessarily in many positions where they have to worry about investing in mass stock. They don't have to worry about these situations because a lot of it's creative based anyway. But typically, it's always going to be the case with a small business of any size or any scale. Until you're at a point where you have cash reserves until you're at the point when you can afford to have kind of shit hit the fan, as it were, and you've got to invest, a month's worth of revenue back into the business to be able to afford the next 6 months of downturn, or you've got to pay for stock that's gone up in price or whatever it might be. And that's why I think that, the only way you can survive it is to be prepared for it. And the only way you can be prepared for it is by having people always be aware of you as a business. Because the way you can survive periods and actually thrive in periods is by having people always know who you are as a business and always want to basically shop with you. Now, whether you're a one-off business or a recurring business, whether you're some sort of medical center where you hope that someone only needs to come to you once for one prescription, or whether you're a gym and people are coming multiple times a week, hopefully, or multiple times a month, you always need customers coming to you. And the only way you do that is by people knowing about you. And that's through marketing, and obviously one of the most powerful forms of marketing is word of mouth. And this is ultimately how most small businesses survive. I mean, most of them aren't able to afford to put the time and effort and money, especially, into marketing, because they can't even afford a massive team of people, because that's usually the case. You can't just have one social media apprentice, and paying their salary to try and, get your social media a bit more active, because that never really usually works, realistically. You're just giving an apprentice some experience so that they can say they've done some social media management for a local business. And ultimately, they can't really help toward the word of mouth. The word of mouth, in most small business owners' cases, is it comes from them coming into the store or whatever business you might have and just having a positive experience, and I'm recommending their positive experience to somebody else, and then it keeps going and going and going. Word of mouth spreads, recommendations spread, and reviews have positive reviews, and people want to keep coming to your store or whatever business you have. So ultimately, word of mouth is the biggest thing. And that starts at the business. It starts at the experience. It starts there. It starts inside the business. But the way you get people into the business in the first place is ultimately by marketing the business. Now, of course, this costs tons. Like I said, you have to get teams and teams of people. And to actually be successful with marketing, it requires more than just one apprentice. And you never are able to actually get exactly what you're looking for out of it. And this is why most agencies are so expensive as well. Let's be honest. I know agency owners. I know people that, they make good money through their agency. But that's honestly because they know the results some of their clients get, so they're able to charge that for other businesses that don't necessarily need to be spending that much with them. And ultimately, this is why I started my agency. And I'm not trying to sell it in this. I'm ultimately just trying to explain kind of the reality of small businesses, really. Because I think the reality for most small businesses, obviously, is they can't afford marketing services unless they're able to randomly get like a cash injection, have like 100K, or have 10% of their monthly revenue, or 20% of their like yearly revenue, and they can just invest in a team of marketers, and they can just invest in the next 6 months and slowly start growing. But that's never normally how it works, and that's never the reality of investing in a marketing agency or anything like that, because it just never normally works out for more than a few months anyway. And yes, sometimes you do get some good results. You get a successful ad campaign because you got a couple of K you can invest in an ad, and someone that they've employed from somewhere in the world that you've invested in their agency has, given you a decent, they've made a few K for you from the 1 or 2K you've invested, and you've made a bit of a profit. Or maybe it's, you've got some local videography people that have come in and made some content for you, and that content does pretty well. It's cost you maybe 1,000 or something, and then you get a few thousand views from it, and you get some notice, and people come in and go, "Oh, I like that video. I saw that video that you did. You got some content people come in. Did you make that for you? Oh, that's pretty good." And this is usually the case. And ultimately, none of this really helps a small business properly, like for the long term, actually to grow. And it's what I've seen with, again, I know a few different agency owners, and they don't seem to either want to focus on a long-term growth of an agency, of a business, one of their clients, sorry, even if they obviously might promote that idea, we want to work with a client long term, they never seem to either know how to help the client long term because they're obviously trying to focus on this successful ad campaign, or help them with just the overall optimization of the accounts and just trying to make sure they're getting as much attention through their social media. But I've never seen a marketing agency or anyone that works with small business owners actually try to help them grow for the long term. Actually try to help them grow for the long term. And so the reality is that, most small businesses end up dying out, or they don't survive in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they get bought out by a bigger business that just wants that business, and they're basically trading for pennies on the pound type of thing, or they can buy it cheap, and they've obviously got the capital to invest it, because if it's a business doing maybe millions a year or hundreds of thousands a month or whatever, then they can invest 100K into a small business or 50K into a small business, basically just buying the stock at that point or buying the operations. So that's why most small businesses cease to exist after 5 to 10 years, is because they can't afford a team of people, and it's not profitable enough for them to keep on a apprentice. And an apprentice in reality doesn't have the experience that an entire team of marketing people have. They don't have years worth of editing, years worth of content creation, years worth of social media experience, and they've not learnt the ropes of how marketing works, especially if they've just come out of school or colleges, but like if they're maybe only 18, 19 or 20 or something, and they've not experienced working with clients before. They've probably just come out of college and they know a little bit about social media. They've made some videos before and that's it. Whereas they've not been editing for years or understood social media much beyond their own personal use of it. And that's why most small business owners die. And that's unfortunately, why most small businesses die. Sorry. But it's honestly why I see it so much, and why it is the way it is because they cannot afford marketing teams to come in and just help them for the long term. And so I just think it's just ultimately the way it is, really. But it's a shame, but I think that ultimately, if in the long term you're able to grow from it, then I think then that's the best opportunity you can possibly have. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but I just wanted to share this thought process, because it's something that, it's something I'm thinking about all the time. As an agency owner, this is something I'm trying to focus on all the time. And it's one of the main things I focus on, is helping clients like forever if I possibly can. And it's my goal, obviously, to try and help small business owners grow as much as I possibly can. That's literally why I made my new agency back at the end of 2023, Easy 360, is because most small businesses just can't keep going because they can't afford it. And they really just need like a marketing team that has the experience, but they can't afford thousands of pounds, maybe tens of thousands of pounds or dollars worth of staffing costs. Because if your revenue is only a few thousand, or maybe 10 or 20,000 a month as a small business, maybe not even that, maybe just like a few thousand, how are you supposed to, you're gonna spend like double or three times your revenue on a marketing team? It's just unrealistic. It's just not possible. And you're not going to go into debt to try and make that happen. It's just unrealistic, and you don't know if it's going to work out or not. And that's why it doesn't work. And that's what I've been trying to figure out ever since I started marketing and trying to help local businesses. And it's what I'm trying to do now, is make the most affordable service possible. So, I mean, if you want to check out my thing, then feel free to, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help small business owners by providing you, or providing them, if you own a small business yourself, providing you with an actual team of people that have spent years and years and years doing content creation, doing video editing, social media management. I've been in marketing now for about 4 or 5 years. I was in a position for over a year as, social media manager for a small business. And, I've been doing freelance marketing. And most of this year, over the past year or so, I've been helping small businesses and multiple clients, helping grow their businesses with content and just helping them with their social media. And the biggest thing is that all the small businesses just can't afford it. They cannot afford a team. And that's what I've been trying to do anyway. And I talk to people in the marketing space all the time about how to actually help small business owners actually grow for the long term, not just with one campaign or help them for 3, 6 months or a year, helping you for the long term so that you get not only get past that like small business, small beginning business only lasting 5, 10 years, but you get into the momentum threshold after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you actually become a long-term big business, as big as you want to be. Maybe you want to be a successful small business, or you want to become a conglomerate. It's whatever you want it to be. You need the momentum to get to where you want it to be. And so that's what I'm always trying to focus on. So, I mean, if you want to find out more about what I do, then I'll leave a link to the website below. But yeah, I just really wanted to share this because I want to try and help small business owners as much as I can. And as a small business owner myself, I know this struggle. I understand. Oh, I don't have physical. I've not got stock or anything. I've got software costs. I understand the operating costs of it, but generally just trying to help those that do have lots of operating costs. They've got staff, they've got software, they've got physical goods they've got to buy, and it's seemingly impossible. So to prepare for those times, you need to be able to have that team behind you and working with you all the time. And you just can't afford it normally, which is why, businesses like mine are here to help, and I'm here to help if you are a small business owner. So if you're interested in that and you're a small business owner, then, check out the link in the description and see how we can help you, because obviously we're literally trying to help you for the long term. We're trying to not just be here for one ad campaign or help you make a few pieces of content over the next few weeks or a couple of months or however long. We want you to grow, because we obviously won't grow as a business unless you grow. We literally you have to grow for us to be able to grow in any way. So we want you to be as successful as you can be and as you want to be yourself. And we don't want to cost you what you can't afford. We want to be affordable and provide the expertise so that it's everything you need to be able to actually grow and gain momentum so that you can survive and thrive normally. We want those times where it's impossible to pay for that stock, or it's impossible to keep operating because there's just no profits coming, no revenue at all. And so there's no turnover whatsoever. We want you to be able to thrive in those times, and it just be, and you nip it in the bud because, oh dear, it's just like, we want that feeling to just not even be there, because it's just, oh dear, you've got to pay for some stock. Doesn't matter. It's just a little nip it in the bud. It's just a tiny problem. And that's possible, but you just need the team behind you. So, feel free to, if you're interested, check out the link and check out what we have to offer. But ultimately, I wish you the best if you are a small business owner or know someone that does. And yeah, hope you take this information and, can take into consideration if you know a small business owner or you're a small business owner. And hope we can all help each other for the future in the long run. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.